oh, go back to your country, you rice eating, blah, blah, blah.
Hey everyone, my name is Hannah. I'm a design manager here in Toronto. I make videos about design careers as well as life and stuff. In today's video, I want to talk about the 10 things that I wish my younger self knew when I first started out, and hopefully that advice will land with some of you who are starting out your career journeys in 2022.
The first piece of advice is you do not have to incorporate feedback from everybody that you get it from. Anybody that's giving you feedback is trying to improve your skills, or actually sometimes they aren't and they're selfishly giving you feedback to benefit themselves. It's going to be hard in the beginning to figure out whose motives lies where, but over time that skill to be able to differentiate the different pieces of feedback is going to get sharper. However, I think it's just important to mention that, again, you don't have to incorporate every single piece of feedback. The most important thing to consider is the context. So who is giving you this feedback? What is their purpose for giving this feedback? And what can you truly benefit from that? Number 3 is going to be a little bit tough, I think, at beginning to figure out how will this benefit me. But if it is coming from a manager who has your best interest at heart, it might be in your interest to incorporate that feedback. But things like feedback from product managers or sales folks or even engineers may or may not need to be incorporated into your designs. The next piece of feedback that I have for my younger UX self is to do the inner work. I was actually dealing with a lot mentally, but I wasn't reaching out for help until much later, where it really started to boggle me down and really get me into some dark places. Again, this is different for everybody, but I think for designers to really have healthy mindsets, you do have to do a lot of inner work, and that inner work will help you become a more resilient individual, as well as being open and receptive to feedback and conversations and ideas. So I really recommend, if it is something that you haven't done before, explore inner work, explore self-development, and try to work on healing your inner child. The third thing, which is sort of a continuation from the second thing, is learn to draw healthy boundaries. What do I mean by this? It means that you are setting healthy boundaries with your manager around your working hours. You're not, working around the clock or chasing crazy deadlines. This is going to be tough at the beginning when you're trying to prove yourself, but I guarantee you it will actually show up in your work much more effectively when you are saying, I do my work, my best work, my work between these hours. I'm not saying you have to clock in at 9 and clock out at 5. It's what your hours are that work with the company and work with your team. But it is something that you should communicate with your manager. Another thing is boundaries around your work and your opinions. So when it comes to design, a lot of the times there are going to be trade-offs. Most of the time there's going to be trade-offs. However, I believe in maintaining that boundary of, I am the designer here, and given the capacity, given this feature, I do believe that this needs to be incorporated from a design standpoint. We cannot compromise on it. If we can budge on budget, engineering efforts, etc., but I believe this will be the best user experience. And so I think a lot of the times in those situations, people will try to be the designer for you, but you can just maintain that I'm here to represent the user. And if we are making trade-offs, that we are very clear the trade-offs that we're making and how it will trickle down into effects down the line. I think my biggest mistake was allowing others to design for me when in fact I was hired as the designer. Everybody else has their role that they fulfill, but because design is so visual, people think that they can put in and impart their opinions and that, it will be like the best experience. Unfortunately, sometimes they don't have the holistic view that we do as the designers. And so working with different stakeholders to bring them to that unified view is going to be tough, but necessary for when you need to tell them, hey, I'm the designer here, so this is my expertise, this is my best recommendation. This fourth thing is sort of like a life hack for design, where I think at the beginning of every project, what has really helped me and what I wish my younger UX self knew is to start off every project after a little bit of discovery to come up with design principles. What do I mean by design principles? I mean a sort of North Star, so like 3 to 5 maximum elements of user experience or UI design that we want this feature. It is a must-have for this feature to incorporate. So what can those things be? It could be instilling a sense of trust. These principles are pretty generic, but specific to the feature. What do I mean by this? It means that things like instilling trust as a design North Star is going to help your product managers, help your engineers come up with solutions that, let's say, if your design solution isn't maybe the most feasible, they are still working towards a solution that fulfills that goal. So I think it is super important for project kickoffs to have those design North Stars to really help the team, the cross-functional team, align to what that experience needs to have. So again, I wish my younger self knew this because it would have saved a lot of headaches and it would have just aligned folks from different teams sooner. This next point is very personal to me. I am about 5 foot nothing, petite, Vietnamese, Canadian, first generation immigrant. And so I did face a good amount of discrimination, latent discrimination. So it wasn't in your face like, oh, go back to your country, you rice eating, blah, blah, blah. No, it was definitely very latent discrimination, very latent messages about my worth as a person, as a designer in the company. And I think what I wish my younger self knew was to reject this treatment and to remove myself from these toxic environments. Fortunately, I did spend some time in these environments and it did a number in my mental health, as well as questioning my self-worth, as well as just really growing the roots of my imposter syndrome, which I think we all have, but I think even more so when the discrimination is not in your face, but it's these microaggressions that happen. It's these, second guessing of design decisions. It's these asking for these crazy deadlines. And then when it's not delivered, the onus is put back on the person's skills and abilities. And I think that is so completely wrong. And that is something that I hope any younger or fresh or new designer to the industry can recognize and can, first of all, recognize, and second of all, say this is not right. And third of all, if they can't change the company, which sometimes you just can't change organizations and people's mindsets, to remove yourself from those situations and realize that you need to protect your peace. And so that's something that I wish my younger self knew, and giving a huge hug to Han of like the early days, but she did her best and she got out of there and she's kicking ass today. Kind of continuing on that whole latent discrimination piece, I think this next point that I wanted my younger self to know is to be more ruthless and fight for my worth a lot sooner. I think when I started out in design, salaries weren't transparent. Everyone was it was a hush-hush. It was something that was discussed because it was still taboo, right? And so I was severely underpaid, but I get now, in hindsight, why it led me to be the person who I am today or do the things. It almost like it lined up, right? Your story allows you to be who you are today. However, I wish I knew my worth more. I knew to fight for salaries. I knew to go back and forth. I knew to ask about more vacation days or bonuses or, more perks. And I didn't know any of that because the internet wasn't so laden with amazing design creators who are sharing this information. And so all of you who are starting out today in design are so blessed with so much information. Sometimes it's overwhelming. However, information and knowledge is power. So please, when you are starting your next job or whatever it is, look up negotiation tips. Colors of Chloe does an amazing video around that. And I know Fem also did as well. So I'll link those down below, but please, please, please know your worth, but also knowing when to be honest with yourself in terms of your skill set to your experience level, mapping that back to the job. It's kind of hard to ask for a mid-6-figure salary when you're just starting out with zero experience. However, it is not unheard of to be able to land that in certain locales. So definitely do your homework, but please make sure in that homework is also market research and tips on how to negotiate. continuing on the little path of like being, you know, fully realized human being and things like that, is your designs are not you. Your designs are not an extension of you, your worth. And so I wish I knew that when going in. I mean, obviously, I know that now, but I wish the early designer Han knew your designs don't make or break you. You are you. You are full of worth and full of value, regardless if your designs have landed or not. If your designs have not landed, it just means that you haven't asked enough questions. You haven't gathered enough context, and you haven't collaborated with enough people. I used to design in a silo and then show a ta-da moment to my team, and everyone would be like, nope, that's not right. Nope, that's not what we were thinking at all. And I used to take that so incredibly personally, because I would take that as a sign of my ability to be a designer. And that is so far from the truth. It just meant that I was new and that I need to practice and hone my craft. And so I hope this is a message to all of you, is please don't let designs or your work be an extension of your worth as a human being, because you are so much more than that. We are all so much more than our jobs. And so remembering to center yourself in that, and to know that, you know, your outputs as a designer, your outputs at work do not shift who you are and what you bring to this world. This next one, I feel like I learned a little too late, but not really, because it's almost like I kind of got burned early on, but it's don't guess, ask. This comes from my own tendencies to like to seek my own answers. I like to be self-sufficient. I really, really pride myself on being independent, on, you know, just getting it. And I think that was sometimes contributing to my downfall in terms of like new environments, right? Wanting to be the person that, oh, like, wow, the person just, you know, just knows what to do. They didn't really even have to ask. And that is such a silly mindset. When people say there are no stupid questions, there's no silly questions, there's no dumb questions, there's no stupid questions. Ask the question anyways. And I do this regularly now in meetings that are small, that are big, as a design manager with over 7 years of experience. And you know why? It's because it opens up that possibility and that permission for anybody else around me to ask questions, so that they don't feel like they're silly. But I think it's good for me to come in and say, I'm new, I don't know. Or like, maybe I'm not new, but I just didn't know. And so I think it's always great to clarify rather than guess. And this comes down to also like requirements. But I know sometimes as designers, we work within ambiguity, but just level setting that if that is something that we're like working within, that's totally okay. But if someone has the answer and you're just trying not to bother them by asking a question, you need to knock that mindset out and just really just go for it, and just go in with, I don't know, can you help me? And I think people are a lot more receptive of that than to pretend you know, get it wrong, and then have to be like, oh, I didn't know. So to the young designer Han, please don't guess, just ask. I really like this question because it didn't dawn on me until more recently that I should be creating a structure for my growth. Some people are just really with it, and they're, you know, putting Excel sheets together, and their companies are really good, but no two companies will track your growth alike, right? You'll go to different companies and one will use OKRs, the other will use some other framework, and it won't actually track the skills and the, you know, experience that you're building for you as a designer. So I think it's really good to have that separate from the company and to just track those goals, because sometimes it can escape us as designers when we're just kind of doing the day-to-day outputs and forgetting, you know, the value that we're creating. And so I would recommend keeping a log or a diary of your accomplishments so that you can bring that up either in interviews or just feel really proud and understand where you came from and where you are now. So I'm actually creating a rubric for this. So if you're interested in what this might look like, please leave a comment down below if you're interested in like how to track your career progress as a designer. And the last thing that might not be super design related, but it's just something that was my passion and I felt like I could have maybe, you know, come up with the idea sooner, but create content sooner. I wish I created this channel sooner and created content around UX design sooner than I did, and more consistently than I did, because I am so not consistent. But I just look back and I'm like, wow, I was able to bring so much value to people, to so many people, even though my channel is still really small. You know, it just feels so good to get those messages to say like, wow, like your videos really opened my eyes to a new career path, or you really helped me prepare myself for an interview, or just like providing a perspective so that someone else doesn't feel alone. Because I think sometimes in this industry you can feel alone, and then even more so now after the pandemic and where remote working is much more prevalent. And so I really wish I started creating content sooner, because YouTube was definitely around when I started my career, but I just never thought to, you know, merge the two. And so I am so glad I, you know, did what I did now. I am starting to create a lot more content on TikTok. I find it to be a really fun medium to create. And so I'm still continuing my YouTube videos, but on TikTok, I like just have fun with it and like do memes, but also create value and share knowledge on there too. So if you're interested in following me, I'll link my bio on the screen here. But yes, those are the few things that I wish my younger UX self knew. And so I share them with you. So if you are early in your career or wherever you are in your career and you know some of these land with you, let me know, because I really wish, I think I would have saved a lot of headache and a lot of undoing bad habits if I had known some of these sooner. But obviously the hindsight is 2020, and so you can only improve when you do reflections like these. And so if these have helped you, let me know. If you are preparing for a new job or a pivot into the UX industry, let me know if there's anything that I can help you answer. And until the next video, I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye. The first piece of advice is you do not have to incorporate feedback from everybody that you get it from.